themselves to we can hear everybody else better. And I would like to introduce to you the Chief of the New Jersey State Forest Fire Service, Greg McLaughlin, as well as
Here we go.
Assistant Commissioner for State Parks, Forests, and Historic Sites, John Cecil, and the Superintendent of Wharton State Forest, Rob Auermiller. Just a couple of housekeeping things for everybody's sake. We're going to be dropping in the chat a quote from Commissioner LaCharette that you are free to use for your stories. He speaks to some of his personal reactions to the fire. Please also note that we are recording this meeting, and a downloadable version will be made available to you shortly thereafter. We'll drop a link into the chat that you can use. Just be aware that the recording may not be available for a short time after the meeting concludes. At that link, you will also be able to find video, aerial and ground video of the forest fire and the activities that were taking place. And then I'm going to open this up to our DEP staff in a moment, and we'll allow as much time as we can for questions and answers, but please be advised that there are a lot of people on this call, so we're only going to, you'll have to raise your hands, and we'll try to cycle through everybody at least once. So with that, I would like to introduce Forest Fire Service Chief Greg McLaughlin.
Thank you, Larry, and thank you for everyone for joining us today and for coming out to the scene and for helping us to get messaging out about road closures and about fire safety, about smoke issues. It's really important. It helps us to do our job safely. If we have a lot of smoke from a fire like we did with this one, residents get long distances away, get concerned about additional fires. So it's really important to get accurate and timely messaging out, and we appreciate you helping us with that. For the beginning, I just want to give an overview for folks who were not at the scene yesterday and the day before of what transpired here the last couple of days with this wildfire. And then I'll close with an update of what we have in terms of findings now and what the status of the fire is. So we're in Wharton State Forest, which is the Washington Township, Burlington County, and Mullica Township, Atlantic County. The fire spanned those two counties, as does Wharton State Forest. The fire was detected on Sunday morning at about 10 o'clock by the Batstow Fire Tower. The fire was also reported by several recreational canoe and kayaking people that were on the Mullica River at the time that had seen the fire. When our crews arrived on the scene at about 11 o'clock Sunday morning, the fire had already grown in size to about 50 acres. The crews tried to suppress the fire at that time with a direct attack approach, which is where we use our specialized equipment, such as our brush trucks that are designed to go off-road, to actually go in and put water on the fire and try to put the fire out. This area is very inaccessible, meaning that it takes a long time to travel on the roads that are there. The roads are narrow, they're dense sand, they often have a lot of bends and a lot of water holes in them that cause the navigation by vehicle to be slow. And keep in mind that from north to south, the Mullica River stretched essentially right down the middle of this fire. So what happened was, as those direct attack measures were not effective at containing the fire because of extremely intense fire behavior, which resulted from very low humidities, unprecedented dew points, sustained winds at 23 miles an hour with wind gusts up to 30 miles an hour. This fire was sending burning embers, causing spot fires long distances. And then this causes our resources to effectively have to scatter about and try to track down these spot fires, as we call them, so that the fire doesn't continue to grow larger in size. What we do then is we look for strongholds, which could be roads or rivers or streams, to begin lighting backfires, to start a burnout operation, meaning that we want to burn any available fuels that the fire may burn through in every direction from the origin of the fire to prevent the fire from spreading. So if we consume the fuels with fire in a controlled manner from a safe location, such as a road, then perhaps we can slow the spread of the fire. So that's what we call indirect attack firefighting. Now, keep in mind at this time, we also had our aircraft, helicopter, or Huey helicopter on scene that was dipping water from Atzion Lake and trying to help us put these spot fires out with 325-gallon bucket water drops. So once we move to that indirect attack, we go out to the roads, we try to burn the fire in, and we hope that works. That was working for a time being until the fire then started to spot across the Mullica River. The Mullica River was determined to be our holding line that we didn't want the fire to get across on the eastern side. Fire crossed the Mullica River. We were not able to hold it on the east side of the Mullica River. So we moved out again and prepared a new indirect attack plan for a burnout operation on the east side of the Mullica River. Later in the afternoon and evening on Sunday, the fire turned with the wind and came back to the west across the Mullica River and started to travel in a southwest, south, and west direction towards Batstow Village. So we prepared to complete our burnout operations on indirect attack from the west side of the fire. So now we have a containment area around the fire that we're going to try and burn out fuels, prevent the fire from spreading to the east, to the south, to the west, and then anticipating that possibly with variable winds predicted for Monday and Tuesday and a possible sea breeze and a change of wind direction to the south, then we became concerned also that as this fire was going to continue for several days to burn, that it could change direction and move even to the north and change the plan again. So we're preparing for all those contingencies, taking those things into consideration and moving along, trying to keep this fire actually from getting any larger. That containment area, that planned containment area was 15,000 acres, 15,175 acres. Working in that containment area currently as of today. We approximate that the fire has consumed about 13,500 of that 15,000 acre containment area. In terms of containment, our confidence level has increased to 85% containment, meaning that we're confident that the fire is not going to escape, meaning that we're confident that our containment area is going to hold the fire and it's not going to escape that containment area. We're at 85% because, again, we have to ensure that a lot of the dead standing trees that are burning and that the potential for wind change is not going to move the fire across that containment perimeter. Within that 15,000 acre containment perimeter, we had approximately 18 what we consider to be values at risk, real personal property, structures, farms, farm fields. We made contingencies to protect those by putting manual physical plowed lines around those and burning out the fuels around those. We also put in place with our cooperators from Atlantic County, Ocean County, Burlington County, who provided us with strike teams of structural support engines, which contain a lot of water. We put those in place around those values at risk, those structures, to protect those in case anything were to happen or were to go wrong. As well, we did that at Batstow Village as well. We had some road closures as a result of our operations and the fire and smoke. And so Route 206 was closed and is scheduled to reopen as we speak at 11 a.m. Route 542 was also closed during the duration of the fire. That was open this morning at 10 a.m. There was several other impacts from this fire as well to the park and the park visitors. Few campgrounds had to be evacuated. The park is still closed to recreational activities such as biking and hiking. And I'm going to let Rob really go into more detail and speak to some of those impacts and implications for what happened the last few days and then moving forward as well. So currently, just to add on the update, we still have approximately 75 firefighters on scene. We have 22 engines and an assortment of other equipment such as water tenders. We still have a helicopter on scene for observation from the air to help direct those ground resources. And they'll continue to be there for several days, if not a week, or until we get significant rainfall to cool this fire. There'll still be a lot of smoke that's being produced from either turfing, which is ground fuels that are burning, and perhaps below ground, and also any unburned fuels that may ignite that are within the perimeter of that containment area. So there still may be smoke for several days. There will likely be smoke for several days, but we will continue to monitor to what we call mop up, which means to go and try to, where we can access them, put water and put out hot spots, which could be burning stumps, burning logs. During the time of the fire, as I said, we did have some real intense fire behavior, and we were lucky that we had no injuries, no structure damage, and we were able to get everybody who was instructed to leave the park out safely. That would be about all I would have now. I'd just like to finish on that update maybe and go to Rob so he can talk about the park implications.
Thank you, Greg. Rob Miller, the superintendent of Wharton State Forest.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Larry. As noted by Greg earlier, we initially did evacuate 2 of our campgrounds. The campgrounds in particular were Mullica River Camp and Lower Forge Camp. These are hike-in and paddle-in only campgrounds. So our visitors did not have the ability to get out quickly on their own, so they were evacuated by State Park Service and State Park Police staff. And as a result of the smoke and the fire itself, Batstow Village was closed at the time of the fire started, and remains closed today. Batstow Village has 40 historic structures within it. It is also the center of most of our trailheads. So Wharton State Forest maintains about 150 miles of blazed hiking, biking, and horseback riding trails. As a result of the fire and this closure, all of those trailheads have been closed since. And as a precaution, to the west of the fire and west of Route 206, At-Sign Recreation was also closed. However, on Monday and Tuesday, we don't offer swimming at this point, so there was little impact to the public to keep that closed. I am optimistic that over the next 24 hours, we'll be able to reopen some of these facilities, excluding the trails. I anticipate we'll have swimming coming up again soon. Batstow Village will be able to reopen. but many of the hiking trails will still remain off limits until we can inspect them for snags and deadfall and other things that are affecting the trails.
Okay, thank you, Rob, for that update. John, do you have anything you would like to add?
Nothing at this time, Larry. I think I'm good.
Okay, so at this time, we will open this up to questions. As I indicated previously, we do have a lot of people, so raise your hand. I will try to acknowledge you in the order in which you were received, and please limit your questions to one at a time, and we'll cycle through as best we can, and then take another round. So Michael Warren, please ask your question.
Thanks, Larry. I saw yesterday evening there was an air quality advisory for Atlantic County and points down the shore. Believe it was related to the fire smoke. What's the current status of air quality downwind, and what advice is there for people who might be impacted by the smoke?
John, did you want to take that one, or you want me to take it?
Why don't you go ahead and I can fill in if need be.
Yeah, so throughout most of the duration of the fire, Michael, the smoke was moving from a northwest direction to a south or west southwest direction, moving most of the smoke up through a really warm, hot column. So there was a lot of elevation, there was a lot of lift, and the smoke was moving out over the ocean. As we start to get into this little bit of change in weather with some higher humidities and humidity coming up at night, we're seeing some of that smoke start to lay down and impact some of those areas. And that's what that advisory was about. And I expect that smoke to linger and lay for several days, because until the weather pattern changes again and we get some wind, so we get dispersion. And so my recommendation is that people that may be susceptible to smoke, that may have issues, should stay indoors until this clears.
Okay, thank you. Jim Murdoch.
Thank you, Larry. About how many people would you say were evacuated, taken out of the campgrounds, the trails, etc., on Sunday when the fire really intensified?
So what we estimated there from the Paradise Lake campground, which is a private campground that sits adjacent to the Wharton State Forest and somewhat within, was about 50 people. Now, the people that were moved, and that Rob had concerns about at the campgrounds that he mentioned, I'm not sure about that number.
So fortunately, the timing of this fire came on a Sunday morning when most of our weekend attendance was already leaving. Checkout time is at noon. So if I had to take a guess, it was probably between 6 to 12 people tops. And most of the individuals had not checked in yet, so we were able to reach them before they even came to the park to just advise them to head somewhere else. And we were able to relocate many of them to other parks that were still open.
Okay, Susan Phillips. Susan? Okay. Dan Alexander.
Hi there. Question for you is, we noticed this morning that there's no restrictions on campground or campfires in effect at state parks. Is that going to change as a result of this fire?
That's probably not going to change. The difference that we're talking about here is, campfires that are permitted, that are within confined and contained areas, and that are done in an area that can be monitored by the State Park Service and Rob and his staff, and not illegal campfires that are left unattended in places throughout the forest where they shouldn't be in the first place. So, our concern for folks enjoying the park is to do it and to do it safely. We want the people that are doing things the right way, we want them to continue doing them the right way. So I should just speak to that a minute for everybody, because I know that question is going to come up. We were able to, there are no power lines, no transmission lines in the area of the origin of the fire. There was a storm that had gone through the area several days before the fire, which we had suspected may have produced some lightning through the night, and that perhaps this fire could have started from a lightning striking a tree and causing the fire to ignite that way. We were able to rule that out, and in very close proximity to the origin of the fire, we did find an illegal unattended campfire. And so that's the cause that we're investigating now.
Okay. Wayne Parry? Okay. Dana?
Hi. Thanks for all this information. I appreciate it. I'm kind of catching up on this fire. I just wanted to know what the latest projection was on how many acres you think this will burn by the time it's all out, and also what the cost of that. Is there any projected cost on how much this is costing to fight this fire?
Okay, so I can reiterate the numbers for what the predicted containment area is, what the targeted containment area is: 15,175 acres. Currently, the fire has consumed 13,500 of that containment area and is at 85% contained. Our confidence level is very high that the fire will not exceed that acreage number or escape that containment area. And we do not have as of yet, but we are working to pull those numbers together in terms of cost.
Okay, I'm going to circle back to a couple hands that have been up for a little bit. Susan Phillips?
Hi, yeah, can you hear me? I was on mute earlier,
Yes.
Sorry. Okay, so my question has to do with climate change, and I know you're still investigating the cause of this fire, but can you talk at all about what the future holds in this region or in South Jersey or New Jersey overall in terms of forest fire risks and the impact of climate change?
Greg, you want me to jump in on that one?
Sure, John.
So Susan, is a great question. It's a tough question to answer, right? Because we look at climate in a global context, and yet we have weather happening daily. And so, obviously there's variations throughout the season. We are seeing trends of warmer temperatures, increases in precipitation throughout our region, but there is a sense of variability with that, right? So we're going to go through spells where we will have these incredible rainfall events. We've seen that in recent years, but we should also anticipate periods where we won't have that. And we may have periods of drought and prolonged drought. All of that is causing an influence on the vegetation that grows in the forest and all of the animals that live there and how we interact with the forest. So, I think the key thing is, the key takeaway I would offer to your question is that less predictability is what we should be anticipating as we move through space and time going into the future. We have to kind of be ready all the time for the worst case scenarios, given these extreme variations that we're being faced with. Here we have a fire that was, we believe was started by a campfire that wasn't appropriately constructed, wasn't done in the right place. And yet it wasn't necessarily during a drought condition. We were seeing certainly weather patterns that were very challenging, with high winds that were beyond what we would typically expect, and relative humidities that were much lower than we would expect. So again, I think we need to be prepared and ready for these variations in weather conditions that this changing climate is going to bring to us.
Thanks.
Thank you, John. Greg, did you want to add anything to that? Operational level?
Yeah, just a little bit that, again, it's essentially reiterates what John said, but I think it's important to underscore that from a wildfire management perspective, we're seeing this across the country. We're seeing these changes occur where we're starting to see our fire seasons shift and become less seasonal and perhaps more year-round or more extended. Our fire season in New Jersey typically would, start about the middle of March, the end of March, and we could be confident in winding it down by about the end of May. And we're seeing fires more often each year in February. And this particular fire behaved a lot like what would be a July fire, where we were under a severe drought in terms of the fact that all of the vegetation is green, but so many other factors. The state climatologist reported that there's less than a 5% chance that the dew point would reach the level of in the 30s in June. So that phenomenon is unusual and not predictable, as John said. And so we have to pay attention to those kinds of things. We do monitor the weather on a daily basis. We do interact with National Weather Service on a daily basis. We have a hotline direct to them. And, that we base our staffing, our response, our fire tower observation staffing, our aircraft staffing, on all of these factors, so we can respond as quickly as possible to a fire. Our mission is to respond quick, detect quickly, respond quickly, suppress quickly, and get these fires out and keep them from growing large. And for over 75% of the fires, we're successful in doing that. Overall, when we see these less predictable, odd, unusual weather conditions, it puts us in a position where we have to be careful and be ready.
Thank you, Greg. Frank. Frank, you have a question? Okay.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Sorry about that. So you had mentioned an illegal campfire or I don't know, pit or something. Can you say, was that in woods or was that at an actual Wharton campsite, or this was a campsite on its own that somebody just erected?
Yes to the latter. This was not at a designated campsite where it would have been permitted in a camping area. This was in a remote area of the forest that was essentially, from what we can tell from the evidence that remains, to just be a makeshift fire. So whether somebody was actually camping there for overnight or an extended period of time, or just stopped there in their travels and decided to have a fire, we're calling it a campfire, but I don't necessarily know that people were camped out or camping there for any period of time. We suspect that people were passing through, whether they were passing through on the river, canoeing or kayaking, whether they were hiking, biking. We're not even 100% sure on that. What we know is that in the origin of fire, we can rule out natural causes, and we do have evidence of a fire.
Okay. Second question, if I can.
Sure.
So you guys had toured, given a media tour of Atlantic white cedar restoration and old growth Atlantic white cedar. I guess it was 100 acres. I don't really remember. Right near Wharton, not too far from the office. Do you know were any of those Atlantic white cedars threatened or burned in this?
I think we were actually in Brendan T. Byrne.
Oh, was that burned? Okay.
Yeah. Okay, Dana?
Hey, thanks. You had mentioned how the season is no longer just March to May. It's a kind of a longer season. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about the numbers. What does that mean in terms of the number of forest fires that New Jersey is seeing on an annual basis? Is that rising? And then the second part of that question is, what does that mean in terms of how you might be changing your prevention strategies? Like, is there anything that you're doing differently to message, or actual physical things you might be doing differently to prevent stuff?
Wow, it's a great question and touches on a lot of important points that I would like to and could really expand into a greater discussion here, but I'll try to make it brief and bring it into the context of this situation. Actually, our fire numbers are decreasing annually. Our prior 20-year annual average number of fires that we responded to was about 1,500. That number has declined to an average of about 1,000. And the reason for that, it could be a multitude of factors for it. But in terms of the longer season, though, we are seeing things that are occurring at different times a year and that are behaving differently. So there still are a lot of concerns here. Our prevention strategy still continues to be the same and still continues to be aggressive in that 99% of all fires in New Jersey are started by humans. And so some of those are intentional, obviously, and some of those are accidental. And so, in this case, if it was accidental, then it certainly could have been prevented. Excuse me. And so that's why our prevention message is really important, and we continue to promote that prevention message. In terms of management that you mentioned, some of the things that we're doing is we've really, really aggressively geared up our community preparedness and protection programs. We have several community support programs for actual education and maintenance around communities. We have one that works with the local community themselves, and we have one that works with municipalities. So we can approach this sort of from a bottom up and a top down at the same time, work with the residents and their actual homes and their developments. They get training, they get an idea what fire season is, how fire behaves, how to evacuate, how to take care of your neighbors, how to, change your landscaping, how to build defensible space around, your house. What are ladder fuels? How does fire spread from shrubs, mulch, up to the canopy? How do embers travel to your rooftops and to your gutters, and how far do embers travel? And, having them make corrective factors to prevent, catastrophe in these communities, working with the municipalities and the counties and our other state partners. Part of how we develop our strategies for managing this type of fire is, we look at areas where we have great confidence that our backfiring and burnout operations are going to work, and they're going to hold, and they're going to do what we want them to do. And they're going to be safe for our firefighters, right? We're putting our firefighters in front of a wildfire. So, we need to make sure they can get in, do their jobs, get out safely. And we look to manage the forest as a whole across the landscape to do this. And a few years ago, out on Washington Turnpike, we did some work to improve Washington Turnpike, to make Washington Turnpike a little bit wider to prevent fire from jumping it. We determined this to be a strategic stronghold based on historical fires and how historical fires dating back to 1890 have traveled across Wharton State Forest. This forest has experienced fire for a long time and repeatedly over the years. So, we did some what we call forest management and silviculture to modify the forest. We're not clear cutting, but we're modifying the arrangement and the connectivity of those fuels and that vegetation so it's less susceptible to fire and fire spread. And so, we put all of that together. We look to the east, we look to the developed communities, then we look back to the west. We look at that core 1,000,000 acres of pinelands forest, which is really volatile fuel that has burned often and repeatedly. And we look at, well, how can we manage that? And how can we make that that forest healthy and have that forest still provide, water protection, air protection, habitat for rare plants and animals, and still provide us with some security and safety with fire protection. So great question, one I love talking about, because we see fire management as not an individual incident or one occurrence, but as a much bigger picture of managing our forests for everybody's enjoyment, benefit, recreation, health, and then protection. So.
All right, thanks. Frank, I see your hand is up. You have another question? Okay. I don't see any other hands up. If I'm missing something, please feel free to ask your question now.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm back again.
Okay.
Apologies for that. So I had seen some information that this was likely the largest fire in the past 15 years, or looked like it was going to be. Can someone elaborate on that and just say how this stacks up against other fires, and what the last, I guess, fire of this size was comparable, and when?
Yeah, sure. So, so for us, I mentioned a little bit before about our strategies for suppressing wildfires in New Jersey. We want to respond quickly. We want to keep the fires small. Most of those 1,000 fires a year, that annual average number of fires, most of those fires are under 5 acres in size. What we call a major wildfire is a fire that's 100 acres in size. Typically, we'll see 2 to 3 on average major wildfires over 100 acres annually. And then sometimes we often see these large conflagrations, which reach into the thousands and over 10,000 acres. 2019 Spring Hill Fire along Route 72 in Bass River Township was over 10,000 acres. In 2007, I think a lot of folks may remember the Warren Grove wildfire, which actually damaged structures and caused over 15,000 acres of forest to be consumed in its path. So that's the one we're comparing it to, but no shortage of major wildfires between 2007 and now, and also some significant fires. And keep in mind here also that living in the most densely populated state in the nation, we don't have to have a large acreage wildfire to cause a lot of property damage and threaten lives. If you just go back to last year's airport fire in Lakewood and Brick Township, that fire was relatively small in comparison to some of these large wildfires that we've experienced throughout history, but that fire wreaked havoc and jumped 4 lanes of the Garden State Parkway and burned structures to the ground and caused a lot of threat to a lot of people.
Thanks. Dan Alexander?
Yeah, Frank kind of hit upon my question, but I wanted to expand upon about the cause of the fire. Is there any indication of, like, was it a group that was in there, or an individual, or who might have been actually back there on that would have been responsible, possibly?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to continue to investigate it. We work with our partners. So we have some of the best experts in fire investigation from Division of Fire Safety, New Jersey State Police OEM, County Prosecutor's Office, our State Park Police, ourselves. we're trained law enforcement officers, we're sworn law enforcement officers, and we have significant training in wildland fire investigation. So we kind of combine forces with our partners, and we all, go out, look at the scene, we bounce ideas off, we look for indicators and patterns, and we look for evidence. Rob could probably speak to the number of folks, visiting the park at the time, and how those folks, it was a beautiful weekend. It was a holiday weekend. It was Juneteenth. It was Father's Day, and I believe from what I observed, there were a lot of people out and about enjoying the outdoors. So to speak to a number that may have been at that location, at that specific location at that time, I really can't confidently.
Okay. Dana?
Yeah, just to follow up on that, thank you. Just to follow up on that, I wonder, do you ever catch, in these kinds of situations, do you ever catch the person who did it? Because I would imagine the fire burns everything, right? So do you ever catch them? And the other question is, what's the penalty? I don't know if this would be an arson case, negligence. So what would be the penalty if you in the unlikely event that you do catch them? And maybe I'm projecting here, maybe it is likely, maybe you catch them all the time. I have no idea. So I'm kind of asking about that.
Yeah, really good question. A little bit hard of a question to answer because that process in terms of the investigation, the evidence collection, can be a really long process. And it's difficult it is difficult to prove arson, to prove malintent. But we've had success in the Warren Grove fire. We were able to prove intent. We were able to prosecute, and the individual that caused the Warren Grove, several of, not that particular Warren Grove fire, but several other fires related to and around Warren Grove, did serve time. Usually, the other part of that is that we look to, if we can prove it, and whether it's determined to be arson or not, we can seek restitution for damages, for costs. And we're successful in doing that in some cases as well.
Again, if I'm not mistaken, didn't we have charges in the Spring Hill fire?
Yes.
Okay, I'm scrolling through the list, and at this point, I'm not seeing other hands up, so feel free to ask a question if you have any. Meantime,
Larry, this got dropped in the chat, but just to call it out for all
to
pay attention to, we are on social media. We do have a Twitter account where we're sharing information about these wildfires that do occur. That's at NJDEP Forest Fire, and then also on Facebook under New Jersey Forest Fire Service.
Correct, and I should point out that I hope, we had a system in place. A lot of these fires tend to happen on the weekend, and we had a very good system in place with getting information out to everybody by way of the Facebook page. I hope everybody has found that useful, especially, under circumstances where it might be difficult to reach people on a weekend. I should also point out that we have posted in the chat the quote from Commissioner LaTourette, as well as the link to the website where we will have a video recording of this media briefing available, as well as a video of aerial footage and ground footage of the fire. So you're more than welcome to access those when that is available, which we hope will be shortly after this meeting. So I'm going to throw it out there for one more chance at questions. Dana, I see your hand is up still. Do you have another question? And
No, sorry, that's me. I forgot to put my hand down.
Sorry. Wayne Parry, I see your hand is up.
Larry.
We hear you.
Okay. I just want to clarify a little bit because I think I kind of got tripped up on myself before, maybe misspoke about the question that came up about how we investigate and the arson and stuff. So the Warren Grove wildfire that we were talking about and that we were referencing at the time prior to that question coming up as being a reference point for acreage, the individual that we had prosecuted was not with the cause and start of the Warren Grove wildfire, but other fires that had occurred at that time. And then, you know, as Larry mentioned, we investigated and sought charges and brought charges in the Spring Hill fire.
Thanks for the clarification, Greg. So I see Wayne Parry's hand up. Associated Press, do you have any questions? Okay, I do not see any other hands up, so I will close this briefing at this time. I want to thank you all for participating, and you know, it's been a really busy day or busy few days for the Forest Fire Service, and I'm sure for everyone who's been covering it. John, Greg, and Rob, thank you so much for your time. If anybody has any parting words, please let me know. Okay.
Larry, just one thing before we go. Clearly, Forest Fire Service is front and center in an incidents with a wildfire, right? But we also have a lot of other cooperating agencies and partners. State Park Service played a role here. State Park Police played a role here. We have assistance from New Jersey Department of Transportation and from state police and from a myriad of county and municipal agencies responding. So it definitely takes a lot of partners collaborating. A lot of preparation goes into, you know, throughout the year preparing for events that could emerge like this. So just want to really emphasize the role and importance of those partners. It's just critical to the success and our ability to manage this to a positive outcome.
Thank you, John. That's really appreciated. Okay.
Yeah, you know, and on a personal note, you know, just to emphasize that, you know, that was something that I always try to do and do it personally, is to thank those agencies and entities that have supported us. Thank you folks as well. I saw this on this fire. I've seen this on other fires as well. The number of people that come out and donate water and food and supplies is just a testament to me that, you know, we live in a great state. There are really good people out there, and, you know, it makes our job worthwhile trying to protect them. We got significant donations to our fire yesterday, overwhelming amount in terms of food, water supplies, granola bars, you know, wet towels. So just like to really recognize and thank all those people.
Great. So with that, I want to thank everybody for joining us. Please feel free to reach out to me or Karen Shinsky. If you have any follow-up questions, we'll be glad to try to help you out. Everyone, have a great day.
Thanks, Larry.